I am 92 years old. For most of my life, I believed something inside me was wrong. Not broken in a dramatic way, not dangerous, just off, slightly misaligned with everyone else. When I was a boy, there wasn't a word for people like me. No one talked about autism in small American towns in the 1930s and 40s. If a child was quiet, sensitive to noise, or uncomfortable in groups, he was told to toughen up. That child was me. I remember sitting on the floor of my bedroom, lining up my toy cars in perfect rows. I wasn't trying to be strange. I liked order. I liked knowing exactly where things belonged. If someone moved one of the cars even slightly, I felt unsettled in a way I couldn't explain. My parents noticed I was different, but they didn't know why. My mother would tell relatives, "He's just shy." My father believed I would grow out of it. Loud rooms overwhelmed me. Family gatherings were the hardest. Too many conversations happening at once. Too much laughter. Too much light. I would sit quietly at the edge of the room, hoping no one would call my name. When adults asked me questions, I answered carefully and completely. Too completely. They would exchange looks and say I was serious for my age. At school, I did well with lessons. Numbers made sense. Rules made sense. History followed a timeline. But people did not. When the teacher asked us to form groups, I hesitated. By the time I decided where to go, the groups were already full. I learned to wait to be assigned. Other boys seemed to understand things I didn't. When they teased each other, they laughed. When they teased me, I didn't know how to respond. Sometimes I thought they were being kind, only to realize later they were joking at my expense. I began studying people the way I studied books. I watched how long they held eye contact. I noticed when they smiled. I practiced smiling in the mirror at home. I didn't know it then, but I was learning to mask. At dinner one night, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. My mother sounded worried. She asked my father if something was wrong with me. He said I was just different. Different. That word stayed with me. As I grew older, I tried harder to be like everyone else. I forced myself into conversations. I copied phrases other boys used. I tried to lower my voice when people said I sounded flat. But no matter how much I adjusted, I still felt slightly out of step. For decades, I thought the problem was a lack of effort. I didn't know that my brain was simply wired differently. And without that understanding, I spent most of my early life trying to fix something that was never broken. As I moved into my teenage years, the differences became harder to ignore. Children notice what doesn't match the pattern, and I didn't match. In middle school, I started realizing that I was often the subject of quiet jokes. Not loud, obvious bullying at first, just small things. A comment said under someone's breath. A laugh that came a second too late. A look passed between two boys after I spoke. I didn't always understand what I had done wrong. Sarcasm was the most confusing. If someone said "nice job" in a certain tone, I took it at face value. I thanked them. That usually made things worse. The hallways were overwhelming. Lockers slamming, shoes scraping against tile, voices echoing off walls. I kept my eyes down, not because I was ashamed, but because eye contact often led to unpredictable conversations. Once, a group of boys told me there was a mandatory assembly during free period in the gym. I went early and sat on the bleachers waiting. The gym stayed empty. After 20 minutes, I realized there was no assembly. When I returned to class, they asked how it was. I told them the truth. They laughed. Moments like that taught me something subtle but lasting. I could not rely on social instinct. I had to rely on caution. In high school, the distance between me and my classmates widened. They formed close friendships. They dated. They seemed to move through conversations effortlessly. I felt like I was translating every interaction in real time. I attended a school dance once. I stood near the wall, watching the room. The music was loud. The lights were bright. Couples moved together easily. I calculated how long I needed to stay before leaving without drawing attention. I asked one girl to dance that night. I had rehearsed the sentence beforehand. She hesitated, then declined politely. I nodded and said I understood. I did not ask anyone again. After graduation, I believed adulthood would smooth things out. I thought maturity might bring clarity. Instead, the challenges followed me into the workplace. I found a job that required precision and routine. Structured tasks suited me. Clear expectations felt safe. I performed well. But office culture introduced another layer of difficulty. Small talk in break rooms, casual teasing, after-work gatherings in loud restaurants. I attended a few times. I left early most nights. Some coworkers thought I was distant. Others thought I was overly serious. I adjusted my tone. I added polite phrases. I studied how long others held conversations before excusing themselves. It felt like maintaining two versions of myself, the one that functioned naturally in quiet spaces and the one that operated socially in public. Romantic relationships never developed the way they did for others. I tried dating a few times in my 20s and 30s. Each conversation felt structured, almost formal. More than once, I was told I was hard to read. Over time, invitations became less frequent. People settled into families and friend groups. I settled into routine. From the outside, my life looked stable. I worked, I paid my bills, I maintained order. But internally, I carried a quiet belief that I had missed something essential, some unspoken rule everyone else had received. For years, I assumed the solution was to try harder, and for years, I endured. For most of my life, I believed effort would eventually make me normal. If I practiced enough, if I observed carefully enough, if I corrected myself quickly enough. But in my 60s, something changed. I realized I had been trying to pass a test that had no finish line. No matter how well I performed socially, it never felt natural. It felt managed. And managing yourself every hour of every day becomes exhausting. So I began to experiment with something small. I stopped forcing myself into spaces that drained me. If a gathering was loud and chaotic, I declined without inventing an excuse. If a conversation confused me, I asked for clarification instead of pretending to understand. If I needed quiet, I allowed myself quiet. The world did not end. Some people drifted away, but the few who remained were easier to be around. There was less performance, less calculation. In my 70s, a younger relative was diagnosed with autism. I sat in a clinic office listening to a specialist describe traits: sensory sensitivity, difficulty with eye contact, literal thinking, exhaustion after social interaction. Every sentence felt familiar. At 84, I was evaluated myself. When the doctor told me I was on the autism spectrum, I did not feel shock. I felt recognition. For the first time, my life made sense. The confusion in childhood, the bullying, the loneliness, the constant need to rehearse conversations. It was not a character flaw. It was wiring. That understanding changed the way I spoke to myself. Instead of asking, "Why can't you be like everyone else?" I began asking, "What do you need to function well?" I structured my home for comfort, soft lighting, predictable routines, minimal noise. I allowed myself to enjoy solitary activities without labeling them as failure. I stopped measuring my life against milestones I had never truly wanted. I did not overcome autism. I overcame shame. There is a difference. Autism is part of how my brain processes the world. Shame was the belief that this processing made me lesser. Here is what 92 years have taught me. Not everyone will understand you. That is not your responsibility to fix. Endurance builds strength, but self-acceptance builds peace. You do not need to edit yourself into exhaustion just to make others comfortable. I live alone now. My parents, the only people who understood my rhythm without explanation, are gone. The house is quiet. Some might see that as a sad ending. I wake up each morning without pretending. I speak without rehearsing every word. I allow pauses in conversation. I no longer apologize for needing structure. If you are watching this and feel out of step with the world, I want you to hear this clearly. Different is not defective. You may need different environments, different pacing, different expectations. That does not make your life smaller. It makes it specific. And a specific life, lived honestly, is far stronger than a perfect performance. It took me more than 80 years to learn that I was never broken. You do not have to wait that long. It felt like maintaining two versions of myself, the one that functioned naturally in quiet spaces and the one that operated socially in public. Romantic relationships never developed the way they did for others. I tried dating a few times in my 20s and 30s. Each conversation felt structured, almost formal. More than once, I was told I was hard to read. Over time, invitations became less frequent. People settled into families and friend groups. I settled into routine. From the outside, my life looked stable. I worked, I paid my bills, I maintained order. But internally, I carried a quiet belief that I had missed something essential, some unspoken rule everyone else had received. For years, I assumed the solution was to try harder. And for years, I endured.